where you will learn how to support the social emotional needs of your child. This is week 4, so behavior plans and reward systems. So before we get started, we'll mute you. Feel free to use the chat for questions. Dr. Cardona will be monitoring the chat. We'll have a Q&A at the end. For those that feel comfortable, you can turn your camera on at the end and place yourself in gallery view. So just to start with introduction, so my name is Melissa Gonzalez. I'm a psychology intern at the Mailman Center for Child Development, doing a rotation at the Autism Clinic. And now I'll let Pika and Dr. Cardona introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Deepika. I am a graduate student at FAU, and I'm doing my practicum at the Autism Clinic at UM.
Perfect. So as I mentioned, this is week 4 of a 6-week series. You can tune into any or all of the sessions in the series. So the structure of today's presentation is about 20 to 30 minute presentation, and then we'll leave the end for Q&A about 15 to 20 minutes. And again, you could use the chat box to ask any questions at any point during the presentation, and we will answer them at the end. We are recording the presentation portion, but we'll turn off the recording for the discussion portion. So everything that we do discuss will be confidential. Okay, so the next slide, you'll see here, there's some summer activities and support for families. So make sure to check out other virtual resources that UM-NSU card has to offer. The mental health support group for parents will also be running for 6 weeks, which is the mental health support group for parents. On the next slide, so here we will be talking about, or today we will be learning about behavior plans and reward systems. So I will be going over defining reward systems and identifying behaviors, and Deepika will discuss identifying rewards, how to implement a behavior plan, and some of the common problems with reward systems. At the end, we will have a Q&A session where you can ask any of those questions, or we could address any concerns that you may have. So starting off with the purpose of behavior plans or reward systems. So behavior plans and reward system provides kids with positive feedback, which is the best, or kids respond best to positive reinforcement. So that helps reinforce positive behaviors and expectations. So you will increase and encourage desired behaviors while decreasing some of those undesirable behaviors that you don't want to see. Behavior plans and reward systems also produces a challenge with a payoff. It provides children an incentive which will increase a child's motivation, their buy-in, and also their effort. So first we'll talk about token economies and what the token economies are. So most reward systems are based on this idea of token economy, and a token economy is the use of tokens as a method of delivering reinforcers, such as tokens, tally marks on a paper, smiley faces, through your child exchanging them for backup reinforcers, which would be they like to do, like an activity, like a special outing, video game time, phone time, YouTube, things like that. The idea is to reward and encourage the behaviors you'd like to see more of in the home. It's also used as a method of strengthening a behavior or increasing its frequency, because the tokens are a way of paying children for targeted behaviors, then use these tokens to buy desired activities or items, such as video game time or special outing. There's lots of advantages of token economies. One of them is that it bridges the delay between the target response, so the desirable behavior, and the backup reinforcer, which is the powerful reward. So in between with the target responses, we'll give them immediate reinforcers or immediate praise for those desirable behaviors, and then they can trade it in for that backup reinforcer that typically is very motivating and very powerful. It also allows the reinforcement of a desirable behavior at any time. It's used to maintain performance of desired behavior over extended periods of time, so not just within a few minutes. It could be used throughout the entire day, as well as on a daily basis as well. It provides positive reinforcements via the token immediately after, kind of how I was mentioning before. So the token is immediately after the desired behavior occurs. And then just something to remember to also provide positive praise along with the token that you're giving. Another advantage is that it's structured and clear. There will be consistency with how positive reinforcement is provided with desired behavior. And then lastly, future planning skills are developed. And with the future planning, there's different amounts of tokens that need to be earned for different types of backup reinforcers, and the tokens must be kept until enough has been earned. So it allows for children to kind of plan for the future and plan, expect what they're going to get in the future as well. Okay, so the basic token economy cycle, as you can see here, so that you have four different things to talk about within this cycle. So the basic principle is that a child earns a certain number of tokens by engaging in desired or target behaviors and can exchange them for tokens or used as a payment to gain access to backup reinforcers. So again, like an activity or an item that the child likes and enjoys. The target behaviors can range, so it could be from completing academic things to household rules or other behaviors like playing nicely or doing chores. Target behaviors will depend on each individual child, so it's important to kind of assess what it is that you want the child to do or what the target behaviors are for your child in particular. And it could be to increase desire to complete tasks, or it could be to decrease the amount of aggressive behavior. So as you can see here, the first part of the cycle where it says child has no tokens and no access to desirable items or activities. So this is kind of before you implement the token economy. They don't necessarily have anything or any access to this. But then the child engages in desirable behaviors or target behaviors. So then the child is given tokens in number 3 for engaging in these target behaviors. And then lastly, they're able to trade their tokens for access to desirable items or activities. Okay, so now we'll talk about identifying behaviors for a behavior chart. So on the next few slides, we'll include some suggestions on how to identify behaviors for a behavior chart or token economy. You can choose up to 3 behaviors to focus. It really depends on the individual child, but also we want to keep in mind not to overwhelm yourself or the child as well. So keeping it as simple and clear as possible is very important. And then the first one that we'll talk about is to be specific or define the behavior. So this will allow your child to know exactly what to expect and what is expected of him or her on a daily basis. So for example, on this slide, we have a few examples. So share toys with your brother for 10 minutes will be the desired behavior, the target behavior that is very specific versus just saying play nicely. So we really want to define what does playing nicely mean, which then would be, in this case, sharing toys with your brother for 10 minutes. Another example, if you essentially want your child to do some chores, doing your chores would be very broad. So we really want to make that specific. And a way to do that would be take the dishes to the sink after dinner. And then again, the last example here is if you want your child to kind of show that they're listening, again, we really want to define what does listening look like, or how can they show you that they're listening. So eye contact would be one way that they would show you to listen. So for example, make eye contact to the person that is talking to you. The second suggestion that we have for identifying behaviors is to frame the behaviors in a positive way. So behavior should always be stated positively. By doing this, your child will know what he or she should do and what they can do. So sometimes the negative behavior is usually what we might notice first. Like sometimes we might say, stop running, or don't do this, just because, you know, we are very well and we're good at defining what we don't want them to do, but we want to think about how can we make this in the positive way, because sometimes when we think about, for example, stop running, children are really good at finding loopholes. So if you were to say stop running, they might start jumping, they might start doing somersaults, where then you would have to say, okay, stop jumping, stop doing somersaults. So if we were to come up with the positive way or the positive statement, we would want to think about the positive opposite. So instead of, for example, let's think of interrupting. We don't want them to interrupt. So instead of don't interrupt, you could say, wait your turn to speak. So that is just very specific, and it's said in the positive way on exactly what it is that we want them to do, and they know exactly what they want to do. Other examples, so if we don't want them to yell, instead of saying don't yell, we would want to say the opposite, which would be use your inside voice. And then the other one, don't get up, could be another example, but what we really want them to do is to stay in their seat. So for example, stay in your seat during dinner time. And then the third slide here that we have, the third suggestion, is select manageable behaviors. So it's important to allow your child to reach success. So we want you all to come up with behaviors or identify behaviors that might be easier or achievable for the child. Because if the behaviors are unachievable or too challenging, you could lose the child's buy-in or lose motivation. So we want to start off easy and then target more difficult to achieve behaviors as the child begins to master the easier behaviors. So here, some examples could be, instead of saying, maintain eye contact during the entire conversation, which might be very challenging for a child who's first starting to master that skill, you might want to say something like, make eye contact 2 times during the conversation or the interaction that you have. Okay, so now we're going to move into identifying rewards, and I'm going to hand over the mic to Deepika.
Thank you. So in terms of identifying rewards, we want to pay attention to identifying the most effective types of rewards. And effective types of rewards are, number one, achievable. So we want to set achievable goals. So something that your child realistically is able to do. So if your child doesn't think that they can achieve a particular goal, then they're less likely to try. And so a good rule of thumb is that your child should earn their reward about 75 or at least 75% of the time. Effective rewards are also something that is desirable to the child. So you want to choose rewards that your child actually wants. They can even sometimes get or contribute their own input on what rewards they get with you. And then also, whether they admit it or not, most children want the attention of their parents. So we don't want to underestimate the power of a simple smile or a hug or a labeled praise, because sometimes these little rewards can be really powerful and sometimes even more powerful than the more tangible rewards. Also, effective rewards are easily accessible. So for example, if you decide that an immediate reward that you give your child is a token, then it's helpful to have the tokens readily available at home or carry them in your purse or something like that if you're out. Effective rewards are also, or should also be comparable to the amount of effort. So if your child is doing a behavior that's sort of easy to change and isn't that challenging for them to change, that would warrant smaller rewards, whereas really difficult to change behaviors or larger goals for them would warrant some larger rewards. So in terms of how to use rewards or how to use a reward system, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're praising our child's behaviors instead of their traits. So for example, if your child gets a good grade, we want to praise their hard work instead of their intelligence. Because if your child believes that they passed a test because of their intelligence, then they might interpret doing poorly on a test as a sign of poor intelligence, even though we know that that's likely not the case. Also, praising a behavior like hard work can encourage and motivate your child to continue to doing more hard work, but traits like intelligence are outside of your child's control and can't really be reinforced. Also, it's important to remember that when you are praising those behaviors, that you provide labeled behaviors, or sorry, labeled praises. So in the case of working hard or studying for a test, you could say something like, I'm really proud of how much effort you put in studying for that test, or how much you studied for the test, or something like that. It's also important to give rewards regularly and consistently. So instead of offering one big reward for a long-term accomplishment, it's helpful to try to offer smaller or more intermediate rewards along the way. This is because children can sometimes have a hard time waiting for a distant reward that's sometime far off in the future, and that makes the reward less effective. Whereas regular rewards really keep children motivated and engaged. Also, rewards should be given immediately after the desired behavior. So 2 things to keep note there. So number 1 is that it should be after the desired behavior, because if we give the reward before the desired behavior, that's more like a bribe. And we want it to be that they're earning the reward because they did the behavior. So we want to see the behavior first. And then the second part was the immediately part. So we want to make sure that they're getting it as close as possible to when they have the reward, so that they can really learn to link the behavior that they're doing to the reward that they're getting. And the next point here is to catch your child being good. And so as an example of this, if your child is usually really hyperactive and you notice them sitting still, you should let them know that you notice. So we recommend that you try to catch them being good, no matter how minor or small it seems, at least 3 times a day, because that's really the best way. This is because the best way to end a bad behavior is to reward the opposite, good behavior. And it's also really important to always follow through with what you decide to be the reward. So if you promise a reward but don't follow through, your child might not take you seriously next time and not really believe that they're actually going to get the reward, and then that would make them less motivated to do the behavior. But every time you do follow through, your promises gain more credibility. So consistency is really key here. And then the next point is to be clear about what the rewards are and what exactly they have to do to earn them. So for example, if the reward is extra TV time, you want to be specific again and clarify that it's 30 minutes of extra TV time. And like Melissa was mentioning before about being specific with the behaviors, they should know exactly what they need to do to earn the reward. So instead of saying clean your room, you would say hang up your clothes and make your bed or something like that. It's also important that you don't take away rewards that have already been earned. So if your child earns a reward and then gets in trouble for something totally unrelated, then you want to let them keep the reward that they already earned. You can use a consequence or take away another unrelated privilege for the negative behavior, but it shouldn't affect the reward that they already earned. And this is because taking away rewards can really lead the child to feeling defeated and makes them feel that no matter how hard they work, they don't really see the positive outcomes or the rewards. And you also want to reward good habits instead of good outcomes. So that's very similar to the first point. So, going back to the example of studying for a test, you can reward your child for studying for an hour every night instead of rewarding them for getting an A on the exam. And so even though, it seems obvious to us that to get an A means that they studied, a lot of children don't know that how to get an A on a test. So we want to use rewards to teach them the habits that will eventually lead to the outcome or the ultimate goal, which in this case would be getting a good grade. And then also just give it time. So behavior isn't going to change overnight. And so even implementing a reward system can take some time and practice. So it's important to really try and stick with it and be consistent. And then finally, rewards should not be activities that will happen regardless of earning points. So rewards should really only be given if the desired behavior occurs, because again, we want our children to really link the desired behavior to the reward. So if you already have a planned vacation or a birthday party or something that you know is going to happen regardless, you don't want that to be the reward. We can choose something that's truly contingent on the child doing the desired behavior. So there's different types of rewards that you can give, and they don't always have to cost money. So there's a number of non-monetary rewards that can be really motivating for children, like extra screen time, the child picking a movie for movie night, staying up past bedtime, to some inexpensive rewards like stickers or small toys or candy. And then like we were talking about before, for larger rewards for more difficult to achieve behaviors, these would be rewards that take more effort and cost. So it could be some activity like going to the zoo or to the movies or Disney, and or more expensive games or toys that your child enjoys. And another common way of implementing a reward system is to provide these intermediate or immediate smaller rewards like stickers or tokens or points, which can eventually be exchanged for a desired reward after a certain number have been accrued. And the way that a reward system can look like can kind of change based on the child's age. So for toddlers and preschoolers, for example, they might be really reinforced from a really simple sticker chart. And so just kind of putting on stickers or smiley faces on a visual chart that they can see can be good enough for them. Whereas when you get to more school-age children, stickers alone might not be enough to really motivate them. So then you can use a sticker chart and then allow them to trade in the stickers or tokens or whatever it is for a bigger reward. So for example, if you have a 7-year-old who earns stickers for making their bed, once they earn 3 stickers or do the behavior making the bed 3 times during the week, they can exchange it for 20 minutes of extra TV time or something like that. And then with tweens or preteens, they can really benefit from more complicated systems with bigger rewards. They might feel a little too old for stickers, so you can use something else like check marks or tokens or something like that. And then with teenagers, they might outgrow formal reward charts and systems. So instead, we could do some sort of behavior contract, which I'll show you in a couple slides. So now I'm going to show you kind of different types of rewards charts and rewards menus that you can use. So in this example, if the child is earning points for different types of behaviors that they're doing. Here's an example of what they can redeem for 1 point versus 25 points versus 50 points. And so it could kind of be their choice to save up points and wait until their weekly goal. And then after, they've accrued a total of 50 points, then they can exchange it for one of the larger rewards, for example. And then another reward charts could be something like this, where where a specific activity or behavior is actually linked to a specific reward. And so every time the child does this, for example, keeping hands to himself during playtime with younger sister, if he does that 5 times, each time he'll get a little sticker. And then once he's gotten 5, he can get this reward that he chose in advance. This is a more friendly looking rewards charts that I just found online. So there are a number of reward charts that if you just Google simple reward chart, you can find. And then for younger kids, you can also use a visual reward chart where you can see the different types of behaviors that you're trying to encourage, and then they can get a star for each one. And once they've gotten 5, they can kind of choose which reward they'll get for it. And then there's, for the older kids, the behavior contracts, which I started talking about a little earlier. So the behavior contract is basically an agreement between you and your child where you really outline the goals specifically of what you want to see them improve or do more of. And then there's an optional section here where you can write out the consequences if they don't meet their goals. And then importantly, to outline what the specific rewards or positive consequences are if they do meet their goals. So again, these contracts are most useful for older kids, at least 2nd grade and above, and especially kind of with the teenagers too. And they can be really helpful because they just make the expectations really clear so the child or the teenager knows exactly what's expected of them. It helps them be more accountable for their actions, and it just gives really valuable feedback to them on how they're doing. Also, it can be used and adjusted over time. So, you know, if they're consistently meeting these goals, then it can be revised for other things that they can work on. And you can continue to use these contracts for as long as they are effective. There are also a number of apps that you can download that keeps tracks of rewards that you can take a look at over here. And then the last thing that we're going to talk about are just some common problems that come up with reward systems. So I'll take you through each one of these points. So the first is, you know, what if the child or my child is not interested in this reward system? Well, to get them more motivated, it could be really helpful if they sort of have a say in the rewards that they get to earn. So it can be sort of a collaborative effort so that you can make sure that the reward is something that they are motivated to receive and will be motivated to work to receive as well. It's also helpful to keep simple rewards on the menu that only require a couple of points so that they can have more opportunities to actually physically see themselves getting rewards. Also, if your child has many privileges outside of the reward system, they might not have that much motivation to earn even more rewards. So in that case, it could be helpful to try to link the privileges that they already are receiving to good behaviors so that the good behaviors start to become contingent on receiving the reward or the privilege. The next thing could be, you know, losing track of reward points. So with this, even if it seems kind of daunting at first to keep track of all of the points that they might be receiving, it is really important to try and do that as best you can throughout the day. So we have an example here of how you can do that. So one is, in this example, you know, you can have your child, a younger child, you know, decorate a special container where they can keep all of the tokens that they earn. And then you can decide together where you'll keep the container. And then you can keep the tokens that they're earning in a separate area that's not accessible to them so that they don't kind of sneak a few tokens when you're not looking. And then you can just write down, keep track on a piece of paper on your phone, how many tokens the child is earning. And then, you know, at the end of the day or at the end of the week, whenever you count tokens, you can have them count with you and verify how many tokens they should have. And you can even include, you know, counting the right number of tokens as something to put on their reward system. They can get extra tokens if the number that they come up with is the right amount. So another thing that might come up is if your child gets really upset when there are no earnings. So our recommendation of handling this is to just try and keep it as positive as possible. And again, you don't want to take away points for misbehavior. And if you do start to see things like whining or begging or arguing about not earning, you can ignore those behaviors. And then going back to, you know, keeping it as positive as possible, you can remind them that, you know, you didn't meet your goal today and that's okay. We can try again next time. We can try again tomorrow. And kind of say it in an attitude of sort of hopefulness that you hope they'll be able to earn the next point soon, or you're looking forward to trying again tomorrow so that they can earn the reward. And then if they do handle that frustration well, definitely a good opportunity to catch them being good and give them a labeled praise in that moment. And then so if the reward system isn't fair to siblings, what we recommend is then also giving siblings a chance to earn points too. So each child can have different behavioral goals that's kind of specific to each child and rewards that are specific to them too. And then, you know, you can even create some sort of healthy competition among the siblings where if each sibling, or if the kind of pooled or total number of points that they earn is some number, here the example we say 20 points, then they all can have a reward or kind of do all something together. So in this example, then if, you know, all together both siblings earn 20 points, then the family will go to the movies, and it'll be a movie that both siblings would want to watch or would enjoy. And then, because sort of doing this can encourage them to cheer each other on, be a little bit of a competition, and sort of kind of be a fun activity for them together. And then finally, if your child loses motivation fast, usually this would happen if the child perceives the reward system as something that's too difficult or too confusing. So in order to avoid that from happening, we recommend that the child has an opportunity to earn up to several tokens a day. And then also, to avoid it from being too confusing, to focus on 1 to 3 behaviors at a time. So just keeping the system really simple. And then, you know, if they're sort of no longer motivated by receiving the same reward over and over again, like if they're always getting 10 minutes of extra screen time and that's not exciting for them anymore, then you can sort of change up the reward menu and introduce different types of rewards that would be more motivating for them. Okay. So that was a lot of information.